Thank you very much. Please take your seats. Thank you. I'm now going to hand over to our Dean of INSEAD, Francisco Veloso, who's going to say just a few remarks before we start the panel.
Welcome, everybody. Delighted to have you here. And we're going to have a hopefully very interesting conversation between the four of us. And I'll hand it over to our moderator in a second. I just, of course, as dean of the host institution today of this gathering, just wanting to welcome you all and tell you how delighted we are to have you all here. Certainly our fellow deans and guests and our moderator and all the other panelists, but all of you, your the participants. And so thank you very much for coming and looking forward to the discussion as well as, of course, the conclusions of today's gathering. Liz.
Thank you. I know we're all delighted to have all of the deans here today speaking on this issue. I guess it shows that the fact they've given up their Saturday to be here, how significant climate change is. I mean, it's such a hot topic right now. Just to say welcome to those of you who are tuning in on YouTube as well. It's great to have you with us. So hopefully you'll enjoy the session ahead. One thing that really strikes me when I speak to people in the business community about climate change is at times how dismissive they can be. And they don't really want to take certain issues on board that have been given to me in terms of environmentalists. As deans, I just wondered, what challenges do you face? And also what you're planning in terms of the future?
Thank you. I think we all face the same challenges in different degrees to the point that you said. I mean, I think that we as deans see, certainly I see the whole range, right? From people that are right at the forefront of wanting to drive change and not just wanting, but actually doing it, by their purpose, their commitment, their initiatives, their entrepreneurial actions. And they push everybody, including us, the business school, to do more, which is fantastic. And then we have the other extreme, right? The skeptics, the negligence, the indifference, and those need to be perhaps better aware, better understanding. And I think that is true for us as deans, and certainly for me, across all the populations, right? The populations of students, the populations of alums, and the populations of faculty as well. So I see our role, certainly my role as dean, to make sure that, given the importance that I feel that this aspect has, that I move the dial on on all dimensions. If it's the activists, the leaders, to hopefully give them the platform and help them support their role. If it is the negligent or the unaware, that they become better informed, better understanding, so that it can move towards action. And for those that are skeptical, to perhaps make them better enlightened and explain why they need to perhaps review their perspectives. And that's certainly the commitment that we have at INSEAD towards moving the dial on this is significant at all levels, and certainly from me personally.
Let me build on that. I have to say, over my career as a dean, I found that convincing people don't believe in it is no longer an issue. If anything, the way I see a challenge and opportunity for us as deans is the fact that there is so much energy behind doing something about it. But how is it that we bring those energies together so that it's not just a collection of individual heroes promoting each their own little thing, but actually we can use our platform to create impact at scale. So that's one tension I see that we manage between all this dispersed energy that are all committed to doing the right things. But in a world where, unless we have scale in what we do, we won't have much impact. And then there's another element that we have to pay attention to, and just look at the way the rankings work, for example, that seem to matter so much to our alumni, is, of course, people care about the climate, but salary at 3 years matters a lot more. Not just to the rankings, by the way, to the individuals as well. And that's another tension that we have to pay attention to manage. But that's why we're deans, and that's our jobs.
So I'll build on that. I mean, I think it's more of a disruption than a challenge and an opportunity. And I know that's a little bit of a cliche. In the face of disruption, see it as as an opportunity rather than a challenge. But I really think for a business school perspective, we're in a different situation than the companies that you talk to, some of whom don't want to answer your question. I mean, for us, this is an amazing opportunity. I think we're seeing massive psychographic changes in the learners who want to come to our schools. I remember when I started as dean 2.5 years ago in IE Business School, I started reaching out to our community of alumni and students to understand kind of what's on their mind. It was very clear what was on their mind. It was the word purpose. I just heard it over and over and over again. If it wasn't that, it was the word meaning or values. And so I think we have this incredible opportunity as business schools together to really train a next generation of business professionals who will answer the questions in the future, right, rather than avoid them. And I think that that's our mission.
Let's hope so. Obviously, business models are very much based in terms of consumption, and there's a real sense that they need to change. How are you planning to change those models in the future?
So can you clarify a little bit when you say business model? Us as schools or companies?
Like in terms of you as a dean of a business school, I mean, how would you like to see that change? Because clearly, that is discussed within your institution as much as anybody else, and that is being debated at the moment.
So, I mean, we don't change the business models directly, right? I mean, we're business schools. Our business is education, but we send out the people who are going to drive those changes, and I think that's really our mission here is to do that. And so, obviously the two main ways we work is through teaching and through research, right? And so, I mean, I can comment on, let's say, one teaching first. So I think that there's two approaches to changing how we educate this next generation of business professionals. I mean, we can think about changing the way we teach hard skills so that every function that the core of a business of an MBA or a MIM or an executive MBA, they see each of those core functions through the lens of sustainability, right? And so when they go out, they have that lens that they wear when they think about what they're going to do in their company. So I think that's absolutely critical, and we're all doing that. I think personally more critical is the soft skill side of it, and I hate the word soft skills because they're the hardest to teach and the hardest to learn. So there's nothing soft about them, but I think mindsets are critical on that side of it. And I think what we really need to do is change mindsets. It can happen a bit in classrooms, but I think where mindset change really needs to happen is through experience, right? And there's the historical debate, the philosophical debate about whether you can teach ethics or not, and we do, but I think it's experiencing aspects of purpose, activating, catalyzing purpose in our students that will ultimately lead them to leave and make good decisions. And it's those decisions that I think indirectly will drive what you're asking for.
Also, to build on that, two different elements. One is research teaching, but we also have a lot of convening power. Today is a great example of this, in particular with our alumni communities. And this is a problem and a challenge over which we have different perspective today than when they did their degree. Because we promote the research and the teaching. And so that's another mechanism that I think we're all activating, or bringing alumni together. And I'm so glad there's so many here today. Another thing that we can do is, in the end, what do we do as deans? We create a platform for great minds to come alive together, right? Students, leaders, faculty. And we can make sure to create the opportunities for those energies to materialize themselves. And I'm sure it's true at every one of our schools that the students create clubs, the alumni create clubs, they create conferences, and we just facilitate this from happening. I wonder, though, if we don't have a deeper responsibility, and he doesn't know this, and he's looking at his phone right now, so let's see if he picks up. But Fabrizio has a really interesting paper from 2005, where he talks about how the assumption that we use within our theories actually can sometimes become self-fulfilling prophecies. And as an economist myself, who manages faculty, sometimes from economics, sometimes from other disciplines, I do see how people in their behavior make their theories real. Right? And I think there's a deeper question there that would be fair to question us, is as we as business school willing to challenge some of the basics and fundamentals of what we teach, and willing to confront how is it that it shapes those mindsets that you're talking about. And yeah, I think our industry could be pushed a little bit more on that and make more of. I mean, he got a lot of citations for that, but does that mean that we've taken that research and others to heart in asking ourselves? My experience as a leader is not yet, at least.
I think building on this part of the intellectual part, I think it is quite important when we think about the role that the faculty can play on understanding some of those decisions and really grounding that. For example, if we want to advance the whole idea of more kind of a more regenerative approach towards business, having the roles that we have collect individually and collectively as business schools to the research that we do and to the cases that we publish and the things that we do can be very, very powerful to just show that this is happening, and actually can be a very interesting business model, because we have part of that change of mindset is to think of these as a constraining element and be much more as an enabling element. That is a huge set of business opportunities to be put out there, and we have responsibility to show that at all levels, from the way that we do our research, our cases, and the way that then we teach. And that is important, emphasizing a couple of things that were said already, because they are quite important. That connectivity between making sure that is present in each of the elements, the way that we think about the fundamental knowledge that people acquire, so be it finance, strategy, operations, but then take that to actions. And for example, that at INSEAD has been manifested with this idea of changing the core courses to make sure that that is present, but also making sure that the capstone approach, which is that integrative part, which Lee was saying, where the students confront the various things to solve a problem, has a sustainability lenses to it. So that is action oriented, that is problem solving oriented. That's a very important part of what we have to do to make sure that we capture the supply chains. One thing, and this, building on the point that you made about the way that people incarnate, I'm seeing that change in a very interesting dynamic, even within, for example, the faculty, because I arrived as dean at INSEAD only 9 months ago, and so one of the things that has been very nice is to meet with each of the individual faculty one-to-one and to ask them a very simple question: what are the projects that you're more excited about, that you're now working on, right? That are really, that you really want to push forward, and very naturally to see the fraction of those that have a sustainability component into it. It was been very rewarding, because it's not all of the research, but now you can see that how's that been really, changing that. And so our roles, and certainly my role, is then to take on that and then just continue to push, and that push comes from us, but as has been mentioned, also from the broader platform, our alumni, our students that are really also driving that. So it's not, I don't feel that in that sense I hardly feel alone. I actually feel that certainly the alumni community and the students are, pushing very, very hard, and that is great, and we need to continue to facilitate.
I was going to say, obviously, everybody seems to have their own perspective when it comes to sustainability. I just wondered, you referred to the rankings earlier. Does that impact the manner in which you teach it? And also, what do you have to aid you in terms of teaching sustainability?
Well, it matters just in that sense that I think we would wish that probably rankings would not so visible. It's unfortunately the result is that when you go back to our students or to the prospective and ask what are the things that are more important in your decisions to go to choose a business school, the rankings continue to appear up there. I wish that would not be the case, or that the
You're not doing too bad
to change. So in that sense, we need to be mindful, but I don't think that certainly that's the case for INSEAD, but I'm sure that my colleagues would say the same. We don't live and make decisions by the rankings, and certainly not on this dimension. Partially because this dimension is not very well captured in the rankings. So in some ways, whatever you do on these, it doesn't matter so much because it's not being very much captured. The FT did a little bit of, the Financial Times did a little bit of an effort to try to incorporate that, which is great. There's more to be done, but effectively, I think we have to do this because it's the right thing to do. Is what the planet needs, and what we think it's right. So in that sense, you can think about how that impacts the ranking. But as I said, I think if you start to believe that a lot of the opportunities that are out there are increasingly having some element of these, that will become less relevant over time.
A little bit of history as to why this is happening. Why are we even here? I can guarantee you it had nothing to do with rankings. It was just 8 deans being frustrated, having to deal with the pandemic and asking themselves, what is it that we could do together that would be important for the world, right? And I mean, I'm not a historian of the business of business schools, but I don't know if anything that has lived 3 years with so little support from the deans across the school, and but just an open door to let this energy just take a life of its own, so and flourish. Yeah. So I think there's something there that is special about this topic, and I think that's what you say is we are approaching it in a way very differently to everything else we approach. Case in point, there is nothing else we collaborate on like we do for this.
I won't say too much because I think most of it's been said, but I think what we're seeing is really just that there's a very strong grassroots element to this, right? I mean, and that is going to change a lot of things. I don't know how long the time frame will be to see that change happen, but I mean, when you have students that are turning down top jobs in investment banks and consulting firms, right, the sought after jobs historically, and they're saying, I don't want to work there, I want to work over there doing something more that I find more purposeful, right? It's their own judgment. That's big, right? That's big. And we're seeing that more and more and more. So that's going to filter into recruiting processes and ultimately has to change. You mentioned rankings. It has to change rankings processes at some point. I don't know when. So I'm quite hopeful that, I mean, many things are being driven bottom up and we're responding to them in one part, but we're also responding because we care as a group of schools. And so I'm quite hopeful that we're headed in the right direction because we're being impelled in that direction.
I was going to say, I mean, obviously, this is very much a unique collaboration. I just wondered if you were already working together on big projects or if individually you had specific research going on in the background that people in this room don't know about, but will end up shaping our lives and shaping government policy going forward.
Sure. So since I have the mic, I'll start unless anybody really wants it. Yeah, I mean, we have some interesting things happening that we're doing inside of this alliance with training of doctoral students, for example, fostering collaborative research. And that's actually where we started with this alliance is there with research. And when we think about doctoral students, I mean, doctoral students become the next generation of professors at schools all over the world. Right. And so that's actually a big impact. So and we have open access courses that doctoral students all over the world have access to. And by including these topics in those courses, we're shaping their impact on the future of education. So that's important. And then I think each of us have our own examples of research that's happening within our faculties. I mean, we have for Konstantina Vanojani, for example, in our research faculty, who, I mean, she's working on trying to level out electric vehicle charging through adaptive pricing models, for example. We have another professor who's a behavioral economist, working on trying to figure out how to change energy consumption in South Asia using air conditioning, basically, by using nudges and looking at how do you look at incentive systems, but also the time curve over which you make behavior change happen, trying to optimize that. So, you know, I think there's a lot of talk about the STEM research behind climate, right, and so forth. And you know, we have a few of those in business schools, but primarily that's not the role of business schools. But when we think about the role of business school professors in sustainable finance, in you know, recyclable products, et cetera, there's a huge role of research in this area for us to do as business schools. And also when we think about entrepreneurship, commercializing and taking to market the STEM research that's going on in our institutions as well.
How many of you do your own grocery shopping? How many of you, when you see a lettuce that is sell by tonight or tomorrow, you like look around to find the one that has 5 more days? Anyone does that? Yeah. Yeah. So we have a professor in operation who has been working really hard to optimize supply chains to compensate the fact that you do this. And it's a big problem because most grocery stores don't have storage to hide the lettuces until you finish to buy the one. And by the way, sometimes you know you're going to eat it tonight and you still get the one that has, don't you?
Yes.
So rather than waiting for the research to come out, maybe next time you go, actually, let me guarantee this. Next time you go to the grocery store and you do this, there's going to be a voice in your head that says, why am I being so bad for the environment? Yeah. So you'll think about me next time you go buy groceries. And this, I mean, I'm sorry. This is like the rest of your life when you buy groceries. Yeah. And so what I love about the research that's happening in our school, and this is where it's so nice that the kind of faculty we have, of course, they care about publishing, but what makes our schools special in a way, and elite in a way, is because they care about their impact and their impact beyond academia. And that's why, you know, in 7 years at LBS, I've yet to be asked a question by someone from policymaking world or business leadership, a question for which there wasn't already someone who had done some research that was relevant. But and our best job, by the way, is to just stay out of the way of research selection. Let them figure out the topics. They want to be impactful. And so they're going to do the kind of work that will change people's lives. The best we can do is help them amplify, like I just did now. Now, every time you go to grocery shopping, you'll think about, his name is Nitish Jain, to give him proper credit. And he's hoping his research is irrelevant so that people don't have to optimize how to display lettuces because you guys are behaving better. Anyway, that's just an example.
Thank you.
Thank you. Want to highlight a couple of things which has to do with changing these elements and the importance of the collaboration on the PhD, because education at the doctoral level and the research level, and this is not just in business schools, it's actually pretty prevalent across all disciplines, is very focused and very discipline based. And this is quite important in business schools because you would have people that are looking at strategy, or they're looking at operations, or they're looking at finance. But often it's very hard to bring that sustainability topic into the foreplay because it's not deep enough on one part, and then it's competing against training on the specific aspects. So the importance of bringing this collaboration on the doctoral education as we train the next generation of business school professors is precisely to make sure that this topic gets to much more relevance and that cuts across, and that becomes a very important opportunity for the way that we can do some of these when we collaborate in terms of preparing for the future in terms of the research and making sure that the next generation of business school professors that are going to be teaching around the world have that access. That starts with our own faculty, but then the idea, of course, is make it more open and more shared. The part taking on this example of what Francois was saying about the research that we have. I mean, we have a lot of faculty working on issues from sustainability, from gender access to inequality, to supply chains. And what is important about these and about creating that platform that Francois was making is to make it visible both internally and externally when they're doing this great work and getting that visibility. And this is really rewarding for somebody like me when that happens. For example, we have a couple of faculty members, Atalay and Luke, that have been at the forefront of kind of circularity business models and understanding what works and doesn't work. And basically about last month, one of their papers won the most impactful paper over the last 10 years on the area on the production operations management journal, which is one of the leading journals in the field. And this is very rewarding, because it's not just rewarding because, of course, they're doing great work that's being recognized, but because that aspect of this is a general award, it's not a sustainability award, and that's when it gets really powerful, because then it's on the back of the value of the work above any type of work that's done. And this is starting to see the movement on this aspect, on the intrinsic value and the quality of the research of any kind, and that coming to the forefront.
Before I open the floor to questions, I just wanted to ask, I mean, obviously, whenever I speak to environmentalists, they get hugely frustrated that everything is so slow. I mean, obviously, research doesn't really move at a fast pace. I just wondered, what can you do to accelerate change? And also, given our alums are here, how will you involve them in the future?
It's a really tough challenge because, as you said, the research process is very slow because you have to do the work, then you have to basically put it through the refereeing process, get it out, and so that whole process is very slow, and this is something that we all face in this balance when we have to manage these. I think there's different aspects. One is certainly to try to find ways to understand the significance of the work that is being done even before it gets formally published, so to creating some of those platforms. The other aspect which we've been trying to do here and we're hoping that we're going to do more is to try to create also initiatives where, as you're doing the research, you're also bringing the businesses, for example, collaborative labs and things like that tries to illustrate the results directly and connect directly to companies in a way that promotes the adoption and the use of some of the work even before things get published and gets disseminated. So trying to find platforms by which you can reduce that connectivity. That's one part. The other part is, of course, by engaging the alumni, and this is why it's so important to have this conference here, because the current students we're thinking are as the leaders of tomorrow, but all of you have been students in one of our schools, and you're now the leaders, and so that is our collective responsibility. That if we're doing our work, we're preparing you to be on that leadership position that you are now, which means that if we want to drive impact, finding a way to work with you to have impact on this important dimension is absolutely essential, because you are these leaders, and so you are in positions that can make a difference around you. And by learning how we can work with you on this common purpose that we all believe in, that amplifies both your motivation and our motivation to find ways to drive that change and to have that impact. And this is an opportunity for us to try to amplify and explore dimensions along which we can make this do faster and with more impact.
Let's be pragmatic. It also helps when the alumni becomes donors. I mean, right? I mean, let's be real. It's not like deans have a credit card from God. We have to find resources, like you have to find resources in your businesses. So that's one element. Actually, I want to push back on this idea of research is slow. It was interesting earlier this morning. We saw a slide on all the standards that have been created to measure ESG, right? And it's like more than 15 years worth of stuff, and we still don't have anything that works. How fast was that? Oh, it was really fast at producing all kinds of competing things, but in the end, as human beings, we're not better off than we were 15 years ago. So part of, I mean, we need to honor and respect and see the value. Why is research so slow? It's because researchers scrutinize one another, because when something gets published, we want to know that actually there's some value to it. So maybe there's something about us as human beings being a bit more humble in understanding that creating content that is useful actually takes time. And there are all kinds of gurus out there, and TED is a fantastic platform, but my goodness, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff out there that has zero value behind it. If anything, it's fast and misleading. So maybe we should appreciate that element that the research process does want to get to. I mean, what's difficult in research is understanding causality from correlations, and that is something that takes time and takes skill and deserves scrutiny. But with that being said, I completely agree with the role that alumni can play, and that's why we do reunions. That's why we all offer content to our alums, and also because that's where there's an interaction with the faculty to help sharpen the question. So if whatever technology we have to create content is slow, at least let's make sure we focus on the important questions, and that's where exchanges can happen like this. And I just want to also highlight something that is wonderful about this BS4CL initiative, which I haven't seen in any other academic forum, is that when we had a conference last year, which was focused on bringing our researchers together, not only we got researchers across schools to speak to one another, that happens at their conference all the time, but they were speaking to each other across silos, across domains. Like, wow. And once again, he says there's something special that's going on here that we need to cherish, is that all the colleagues who have worked so hard as volunteers in making this happen, somehow they've created a way to get our research to talk across schools and across domains. And I hope that will continue.
Thank you.
So just two quick additions to what they've said. So I think there's obviously different types of research, and maybe basic research is slow, maybe not. But what I'd like to also see is greater collaboration between schools and companies, right? And I think there's a lot of opportunity there to accelerate thought leadership and applied research through those kinds of partnerships. So I'd love to hear from you your opinions on that. And then with respect to the alumni network, I'd also love to hear what you have to say, because I believe, but let's see if you confirm it, that I think that there's just a great power to bringing alumni together across schools, alumni who are working in the same industry or across industries, whatever it is, bringing them together to do big things. And I think there's a lot of energy there that needs to be activated. And I would love to hear your ideas for activating it, which I think is a segue to Q&A.
Absolutely perfect one. Thank you very much. Yes, you at the back. This on the right-hand side, thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for the exciting panel discussion, and thank you so much for the practical tip on how to do grocery. I applied my cognitive search engine to analyze the tagline behind Business School for Climate Leadership, and the word leader or leadership is mentioned twice. So the question is, how do you see the role of leadership, individual and organizational, in moving, solving issue and or preventing the more harm? And how do you think the leaders of tomorrow shall be different from leaders of today? Like, what are the key features, key characteristics differentiating leaders of future from leaders of today? Thank you in advance.
Should we go around the room and I'll pick up some more questions?
No,
and
let's
then-
do the question first and get that answered if that's okay. Thank you.
So I'm going to go back to a point that was made earlier about the role of business in addressing those challenges. And what I hope we can help our leaders of tomorrow understand is the breadth of the trade-offs that we face as human beings relative to challenges of sustainability, but also approach those trade-offs with a bit more humility and expectations from our politicians, acknowledging that the issues we face are about different living conditions for us all as human beings. And we never said that allocation of shares of the business should be the principle by which we decide how we arbitrage between biodiversity investment and plastics in the oceans. And so as we help business leaders have a broader perspective on the consequence of their actions, can we also help them understand the limitations of their contributions? And therefore, all of us as citizens step up in understanding the role of the political environment. So maybe tomorrow, broader perspective and a bit more humility. I don't know if we have to answer every question 3 times. But
It's up to you. It's up to you. If you want to give a brief answer. Front row, please. Yeah, we'll go to the front row and then we'll go to the chap at the back. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question. So there's one natural phenomenon that has been around for the last 15 billion years, that is energy, that has been around before human beings existed, nature, biodiversity, climate, business schools, TED Talks, etc. And this topic is taught by almost all schools, whether it's engineering, medicine, sports, farming, religion. There are 2 categories of schools that quite skillfully have avoided that task. One is governance schools, like governmental schools, and the other ones are business schools. So we are effectively in a society where the decision makers and the rulers, they don't understand energy, or they don't use it to take decision. So my question, my sort of, I realize that there's a bottleneck in the decision-making processes because energy is not factored in. And as you just mentioned in your nice speech before, energy is so critical for things to happen. We are here because there's a lot of energy. There's no budget. So energy is so crucial. how are you planning to bottleneck your programs and incorporate energy in your curriculum for the future faculties to come and for for decision makers? Thank you.
Just to clarify, energy is a force or energy is a resource?
There's no difference actually. You can't create energy and you cannot destroy energy as a resource or as a force. Yeah.
So I mean, I think schools are starting to do that. For example, we have a new master's in sustainability and business transformation, and we're teaching energy there. We have a concentration in our bachelor, our master's in management, our MBA in sustainability, and we teach energy there. So I think we're starting to do it. I agree that maybe schools ignored it in the past, but we are starting to do it. And also starting to think more and more about sector-oriented education in terms of degrees, right? I mean, typically we tend to have general management degrees and we tend to have functional degrees, right? But what you're suggesting is, in some sense, a sector-based degree, and that's something we're actually thinking about now. There's some tricky aspects to it, but I think it's an interesting idea.
Just a quick comment to say, I mean, part of the issue is precisely that, the way, I mean, in none of the schools we focus on particular sectors typically, right? I mean, they're all general management. The question is, certainly within sustainability, energy plays an important role. And so is there room and opportunity for us to focus more on that because it's an important either bottleneck or enabler of some of the solutions? And I think that that's a very valid and a very meaningful question. I think historically on the business schools, it comes out of that. While if you were to go for an engineering school, for example, you would have typically a power systems, even historically, kind of research component on the tech part that became connected to electrical engineering, which is a typical department, right? So it comes a lot out of the heritage and how that has been incorporated in this regard. But I think it's a valid point.
Can we go to David at the back, please, because he's been waiting for quite a while. Thank you.
Yes, hi. Thank you for a very compelling presentation of your effort to integrate sustainability and climate in the curriculum. So two comments. So first, we all know we're facing an urgency and a deficit in the taking action. So the implementation, the doing, the integration of sustainability into business, management, and operations is not happening at the speed it needs to be. That's number one. Number two, we understand that there is a dilemma between having standalone education on sustainability and integrating it into the curriculum. But the fact is, you are a business school, you're servicing your customers, and your customers are telling you, I hear it a lot, we want standalone, dedicated curriculum, modules, or education dedicated to sustainability. In the same way that organizations are trying to say, should we have a dedicated sustainability office and function? Or should we claim that everybody's business is to deliver sustainability and versus this is what's going to happen? And so that dilemma needs to be resolved. And somebody needs to have the courage to say, this is what we believe in. Because as of today, the principle that everybody will integrate it in is doing, it's not delivering the effect and the change we're trying to deliver. So that's one thing to consider. The second thing is, because you're facing with a very fast changing market, as I listen to you, and you represent the very best of business education, I wonder, are these the right people to actually deliver what the market needs? In other words, if I was creating a school that was staffed or informed by the top 100 chief sustainability officer and, let's say, transformation organizations around the world, and I was saying this school will train the sustainability leaders of tomorrow, what will be the ability of this school to compete against you? Will you lose market share and revenue against this new form of education? So that's what I'm sort of feeling as I hear you talk. And there's a sense of me that says, they're not going to do it. They're not going to be the guys delivering what the market will need. So I'm saying that as a challenge to you. So maybe you can actually be the guys who will actually respond to the market.
You just started it.
Okay, so let me take the last part because it's the part that I remember the best, which is the idea of a school started in sustainability. But I mean, sustainability. I think we all probably agree. I think that it's extremely multidisciplinary. I mean, to Francisco's earlier point, I mean, it's brought researchers together across functional departments of research to have conversations, right? So it's extremely multidisciplinary. So I don't know if there's a one school solution per se. So I think we need to be multidisciplinary as business schools to address these issues and be teaching policy. We need to be teaching at least a minimum amount of STEM, right, to business school students so they understand the issues. And we're doing that in our new masters that I mentioned in sustainability. So I think that's part of an answer. With respect to the kind of integration across curriculum versus sort of standalone modules, I don't see that as a one or the other. I think it's C, all of the above. And we're doing both. So we're integrating it into our curriculum. And one of the ways we've done that, I think, which is interesting, is sort of a little bit of a nudge, is that when you look at often how faculty think about their courses, it's heavily driven by the structure of the syllabus, right? I mean, these days syllabi are all digital, right? It's a template and you fill it out. And so we've incorporated sustainability into the syllabus structure. So when you sit down as a professor and you say, okay, I need to design my course for next year, what's it going to have? You need to fill out that section. So that's a big nudge, actually, in a way. So I think it has to be across for the reasons of putting the lens of sustainability into every course that we teach. But I also think that there's a benefit to drilling down deeper, and you can only get that in modules or in full master's degrees. And so it's very similar to the digital, to be honest, I think, to what we faced with the question of digital. I mean, when we thought about launching a master's in digital business a while ago, the pushback I got was, well, but everything is digital. So, you just teach digital in every function and you're done. Well, it's a very healthy program. I mean, many sections of students taking digital business, but at the same time, we have MBA students who can specialize in digital business, and there is digital in every core course. So I think it's all of the above, and we need to your point, we need to move fast and keep going.
Just make sure you don't worry too much. I mean, the market is alive and well between us and the disruptors among us, and then the market within our own schools. If an elective becomes less in demand, it drops out, and when there are students wanting new electives are created. I'm sure it's a case at LBS. I'm sure it's a case everywhere. It's also alive and well because our students are excellent at creating for themselves co-curricular experiences that enrich a lot their curriculum. Now, at the same time, don't look to us to be the ones who are going to drive a faster response to what's happening around us. The best we could do, and I do tell them sometimes, is have a few more alums run for political offices. And again, the other thing is, I hope you're all voting at your next election because the pace is going to come from the political process. Let's not put on business the mandate of the pacing of change with regard to climate. That's just the wrong place. So yeah, we're competing really well, and we welcome the disruptors. And I like the fact that our students are so ahead, and so is our faculty in thinking about those issues.
I think Fabrizio, maybe also just a quick comment on that. I think it also works across schools on some of that responsibility. And so, just speaking on this last point, which is to say, I mean, when we're training the next generation of students, I mean, when you think about the urgency, as you said, and this is the comment that I made earlier about the common responsibility that we have. This is the group of people that are already the leaders. Those are the ones that have to be driving the change. I mean, the generation that we're training now may take a few years, depending on what level you are, to get to the position, but that they can be the drivers of the most significant change. That's why it is important for each of the schools, but also the collective schools, to engage with our alums that are those leaders that can effect change. And I do think that I do think that bringing business to the table is quite important. I'm not sure exactly what you meant on that. I do think that we cannot drive the climate transition without business being at the table, just because of the scale of investment and the scale of change that we need to do. I mean, governments create the enabling conditions, but business need to be at the table. And certainly in issues like energy, like you were talking about earlier, Marco, and others, if they're not, we're not going to be able to make progress. That's what I just wanted.
Can we please go to this lady next, and then we'll go to Paolo? Thank you.
From
So
some
this
ladies
lady
in the room,
first.
right?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I was struck by what you were talking about, the FT, the rankings of the schools. We've done studies on 70 of the major companies in textiles and plastics. Only 7 of the companies had KPIs for their C-suite linked to sustainability. Only 2 were credible. So if you've got a ranking problem with the ranking groups of the business schools, what are you as a collective group going to do about getting those metrics changed?
I mean, I think we are all engaging quite. I mean, there's 2 parts. One is to agree to participate in some rankings that do take more of those components, because there are new rankings that are emerging that are not kind of mainstream. And so perhaps one of the things that we can say is that how can we help some of that evolve? The other aspect is to engage directly with some of these rankings to try to shape them. And that there's been a very active dialogue, for example, with the Financial Times to do that. And in some ways, I mean, there is a part there that all of us can help, because one of the answers that we get sometimes when we do that engagement is to say, help me find data that is consistent across all business schools, all the alums, that can be collected, a low cost, and used to form up the rankings. I mean, they turn it back to us in a difficult way, and some of that is what happens in the marketplace, and how do we translate that in a meaningful way. And I think, to be fair to some of these rankings, and certainly I think the FT that I know best. I mean, Andrew Jack, who's the editor, is a person that really deeply cares about sustainability, and it's hard to move that machinery forward. But you know, we need to continue to keep pushing.
Can we go to Paolo, please, because I know he's been waiting for quite some time. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I will be a little bit provocative. Maybe I will provoke smiles. So look, we're talking about the new era of business education. So new business students will receive a different type of education where, to simplify, externalities, especially climate externalities, will be incorporated in the education. That's the future. But we have a big backlog of alumni like me and many here, which did not receive these incorporated externalities in the business education. So if we go into automotive, minor things are features embedded in the next release of the car, so new clients will take them. But when there is something severe, we have a recall, right? So my provocation, you see, I already provoked the smile and the laughing. My provocation is, would this business school recall 500,000 students?
Lifelong learning.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah. And sorry, it's also a business opportunity, because I was smiling, etc. But in reality, if we use innovation, creative thinking, freemium mentality, maybe it's also quite a business idea for the schools.
We are all doing it. Lifelong learning.
Yeah, lifelong.
On that, I mean, I think we're all doing that through executive education. I mean, it's been, talk myself, but I'm sure my colleagues will say that it's certainly one of the fastest growing segments. One of the aspects that we are trying is, and actually we're going to pilot that within our school, is to do, on the back of the alumni reunions, hopefully starting next year, to offer a patch, which is, taking on your, you got a recall, but sometimes you can offer a patch to mitigate some of those. And so in some ways, we're trying to think about what could be a patch that we offer to our alumni that could correct some of that deficiencies that have been identified in terms of our past training.
And the technology we were all learning, and then we learned faster during the pandemic. The kind of things we are doing right now, having some people watch us on a camera, is making it easier. And once again, it's the market for ideas, and we see the demand for alumni. We are more than happy to provide. So absolutely, yeah.
Okay, I tell you what, and we're going to go for the next question, and we're going to go to Laura because we haven't got much time, so we're going to try and do this as quick fire as we can.
Thank you very much. Well, the first thing I want to say is acknowledge something. This is an alliance of 8 business schools, I think all from Europe, and there are 3 deans here. So I want to acknowledge the 3 deans that are joining us today, which is fantastic. I graduated from 2 business schools. So I feel very proud that LBS and IE are here out of the 8. So this is fantastic. I wanted to say that. And as it happens in the corporate world, the tone is set from the top. And you are here answering the very tough questions that the audience is raising. So I think they have the courage already to lead on climate change and climate action. The second thing that I wanted to say is I think that I love the idea of the patch, but in the software. But I think that and also to try to answer a little bit Francisco and Lee's questions that they were sharing. I see leadership at business schools as and your roles as enablers, and to really unlock the power that is in the networks, because the most talented, the most driven, the most hungry to really make a change in the world, in the business world, but overall in the communities businesses operating, are business schools and part of the community. So the fact that we are all here today is a proof point of that. The second point would be we are already, we've been discussing ESE, IE, London Business School, INSEAD, IMD. We have been already creating a WhatsApp group. We want to get into this, how we can have cross-functional, cross-business school collaboration, but probably at alumni level, because my only point that I would like to raise is when you design your syllabus and your curriculum for every year, when you go out to companies, it's a company replying to that, and there is when it comes from alumni, it's probably less filter and probably more honest, and there is a way in which by you listening to us, you can get to a more kind of to the really root cause, or what are the things that really matter in the business world and for future students. So that is also that I wanted to share this point. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Well, can I just say, I know so many of you have got so many questions, and we actually extended our time today, and the clock says time up. So I'm really sorry about that. But what I'll say to you is, anybody who does have a question, please ask. Yes, they are going to be around today. So if you can do that outside the session, that would be great, because I didn't want you to lose that opportunity. But fascinating to hear from you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.